Hi, welcome to North of 48. Well, we managed to get one season in, and I'm very excited to share with you Season 2, Episode 1. We're going to talk about some actions and reactions that happened up in Greece, especially on December 6th. I'm going to be joined by Falco, who is familiar with Crete and Greece and the politics, and we're going to talk about Alexandros, who was shot by police. I'm also going to apologize for the gaps you hear in the broadcast because there is some video involved, and I suggest you go to YouTube, North of 48, to view the whole show. Thank you for joining us. After the break. So on December 6th, in 1865, the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution was adopted. On December 6th, 1917, the Finnish Declaration of Independence was issued. In 1922, the Irish established a free state. In 1967, the world's first child had a heart transplant. And in 1977, South Africa granted independence to Botswana. But also on December 6th, 2008 in Athens, Greece, police murdered a 15-year-old Alexandros in the neighborhood of Exarchia. In response, anarchists, young people, and other rebels from targeted populations rose in revolt, organizing countrywide riots and occupations that lasted for weeks. We have Falco here, who has intimate knowledge of Crete and Greece and the events that happened, and he's going to share a video. Hi, Falco. How are you?
Walter, fine. How are you?
I'm okay. Well, so you lived in
the topic that we're discussing.
Yeah, you lived in Crete for quite a while, eh? A couple of years.
Yes. I lived off and on, and then for a longer period, few years in a row, more or less from the economic crisis onwards.
Right.
I had family moved there as well, so I spent quite a bit of time there, and got to know this specific question, and unfortunately, many related examples or examples of the state and how it tends to react to its population when they try to have their voice heard, or in this case, are just a 15-year-old in the wrong neighborhood with the wrong two police officers.
Well, it's a story that I don't think is been told in North America. It's called Black December, and it's based on this, is it, in Greece?
So in Greece, there have, and this, because mind you, it has been 13 years now, so there are still protests every year on the 6th of December, and from the get-go, so that was from the night itself. They started in 2008 and they lasted for a few weeks, growing in intensity, growing in support as well. And this has become a commemoration like they have for the Polytechnic uprising, which happened, what is it?
Was that 1973?
73, yeah, 1 year before the fall of the junta.
Right. Well, you also have something else with this is you have anarcho-tourists that come down to celebrate, my gosh, the killing of Alexandros.
There has been a lot. So there's two things in that, and there's also Black December is commemoration month that they do. So it's a month of protests because there was more than a month of protest at the time of the murder itself.
Right.
And so at that time there was a lot of popular support outside of Greece as well. A lot of embassies were seeing protests, or cities were seeing major protests in support. In Germany, for instance, there were some pretty big ones. And what is specific then about the location, which we'll get into later, Exarchia is known as a, let's say, alternative neighborhood. The Polytechnic uprising that happened there influenced the neighborhood even more. It's always been a place for community organizing, for anarchist organizing, communist organizing. There's a lot of artists there as well. So it's a well-known place. And then especially during protests like this, there's a lot of support even from people from other countries in Greece.
You did a presentation on that neighborhood, and I think, if I remember right, immigrants also go there. Seems to be the only safe spot for them.
Yeah, because that's, for instance, when I was living in Crete, this was for me, not that hard to find office of the, and I'm using these terms very lightly, political party Golden Dawn, because we're talking about the now condemned criminal organization, which was obviously neo-fascist. And at that time, they were in parliament, and they had been active for quite a few years. And in places like Athens or Patras, or to a lesser extent in the northern, and lesser, I mean, there were definitely cases, but not as bad as they were in Patras or as in Athens. These fascist gangs, you can't call them anything else, were going out and stabbing immigrants, smashing up. I can remember at least a few times on national television that they were saying, oh, in a illegal migrant market, people with a piece of cloth on the ground selling some stuff to get by, or even the legal markets, because they would go as far as to harass African people, Middle Eastern descent. Anything that was considered non-Greek was an open target, and they were literally killing people, and the police was not doing anything, because the conservative estimate at that time was 1/3 of police was actually a part of Golden Dawn. Wow. They were voting for Golden Dawn, and so it's reasonable to say that some of them were also active members. So what this means in cities like Athens is that the legal or illegal immigrants that are there have basically no state support or protection. And then these neighborhoods, such as Exarchia, provided them protection because there the community did defend them. And they went even further. They would do patrols through the city, motorcades, basically patrolling the city at night to make sure that there wasn't another immigrant being stabbed, because the police was not reacting. So that's we often talk about the riots that come out of these communities, but there's very little being shown of what they actually do in organizing as well, because this is a form of protection, you could say, that the community was doing as well, and a reaction at that time. I mean, they shot a 15-year-old in the heart for the mere fact of being a supposed anarchist in a alternative neighborhood of Athens.
Wow. Isn't Golden Dawn, is it labeled as a terrorist organization now, but it used to be a political party?
Yeah. And these are, Greece has known its fair share of fascists and even fascist dictators. And they are openly drawing back those images from the past, which in itself is a very polarizing thing to do, because what also leads to what we see oftentimes now since the economic crisis,
Mm-hmm.
things tend to get really rowdy. But there is, and especially because we're talking about police killing a 15-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds maybe a bit crazy what I'm about to say, uh, and I realize, but it's the same that people in the United States say. It actually doesn't sound that crazy. Like, oh yeah, police shot or beat up a kid, like almost bashed his skull in a protest, which I can't tell you how many times I've seen that on the news or news articles that you read. Or the police in Greece are very violent. During the protests, many of them, the amount of tear gas that is used is insane, and the
Rubber
carte
bullets too.
blanche that they get, yeah, or they any means necessary is very much the case there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we'll bring up the video, and then maybe we'll talk through it for the people on the podcast, and other people can catch it on YouTube after.
Yeah, so I'll lead it in a
Yes,
bit.
please.
I'll pull up the video already so that we have it ready.
Mm-hmm. I really appreciate you doing this, Falco. It's just a fascinating subject and quite heartbreaking too.
Yeah, it is. So as you mentioned before, and on the 6th of December,
Mm-hmm.
2008 is when it happened. More precisely, 9 p.m. We'll see in the video now. I'll maybe start with that. It's what was got out chronologically out of the court records,
Mm-hmm.
because of course the police radio communication, which is the main focus of the video, is very telling,
Okay.
and we'll talk about that. But so around 9 p.m., the two police officers got in an altercation, let's say that. They will make it seem worse, which we'll talk about when it happens in the video,
Mm-hmm.
than it actually is. And the reaction was to shoot at a group of teenagers,
Mm-hmm.
which fatally struck Alexandros Grigoropoulos in the heart, killing him at 15 years old. So
Okay.
we'll start to watch the video now. And the beginning, what you will hear are the actual shots. That was a person living in the neighborhood that saw what was happening. And for people listening to this, they're standing in the middle of the street, pointing a gun at a street corner with nothing happening.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the two shots. And they are calmly walking away now, while soon we'll start hearing the people calling for an ambulance, and the police officers do not respond.
Το χτυπήσανε ρε μαλάκα. Το χτυπήσανε ρε μαλάκα.
Why they walk away is because their police car was not even parked there.
They were walking?
They had an altercation. They had an altercation before this.
Mm-hmm.
Went and parked their vehicle around the corner, came back, stood in the middle of the street, and pulled their gun at a group of teenagers, shooting one in the heart. Which the bullets ricocheted because apparently he wasn't that good of a shot, but it still managed to hit Alexei in the heart.
Right.
Όχημα εξ αρχείων, Αλεξάνδρας 72. Ένα Nissan γκρι έχει σταθμεύσει πάνω στο πεζοδρόμιο και εμποδίζει τη διέλευση πεζών. Ιώτα ήταν η 4306.
Ένα 5 κέντρο το λάβαμε. Ένα 5 κέντρο το λάβαμε.
Τα κριτικά τραγούδια
It was on Alexandros Avenue as well.
That's a call that they got before. So they were patrolling the neighborhoods. They're part of a squad, special brigade, which I think was initially to guard public spaces or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But so they were patrolling the neighborhoods there. And what they said, which they'll actually say on the radio later on, they said they got in an altercation with 30 violent anarchists, which we could see in the video. I don't see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
That's supposedly happened. And then they don't even call it in when it happens. They went back, got in the car, we'll see this, and then called it in.
Mm-hmm.
Not even giving the right position, or we'll start to see how they handle it, and it's eerily similar to how it happens in many police departments anywhere in the world, because that's how they handle their own, it seems. Officer, first thing you do when you shoot a 15-year-old and you get to your police car is call your wife. I'm gonna be a little bit late. Something happened at work.
Το όχημα εξ αρχείων, Ζωοδόχου και Ναβαρίνου, με αναρχικούς δεχτήκαμε επίθεση.
Attacked by anarchists.
As they're driving around.
Κέντρο, δεχόμαστε επίθεση. Κέντρο, δεχόμαστε επίθεση.
Πού είστε όχημα εξ αρχείων?
Ζωοδόχου Πηγής και Ναβαρίνου.
So they've already shot Alexandros, right?
Yeah. And I believe they're even
Είμαστε χαριλάωτροι κούπι τώρα.
calling in wrong streets now.
Mm-hmm.
And they're calling it in not on the streets that they're on now, or as you can see how it happened. And they were ordered to disengage.
Οικείο κέντρο. Μεταβαίνουμε προς το οικείο τμήμα κέντρο. Μεταβαίνουμε προς το οικείο τμήμα.
So now
They say that
they're driving around making a backstory now, right?
και παρικοί που πάγαιναν
Yeah.
και άλλα πουλιά τους λένε. Δεν είναι
And
καμπακιάδικο, παράξενο
the
μεγάλο.
center, they're calling a central command, Central Command picks up on what's happening as well, which we'll see what their reaction is to it as well soon, which is not what you would hope for.
Εχθές βραδύ σε πήγαμε, πέρα στον Άη Γιάννη και θύμιασέ μας ο παπάς με περισσό λιβάνι. Και παρεμπρός που πήγανε κι άλλα πουλιά τους λένε «Για είδες θάμα και αντίθαμα που γίνεται στον κόσμο, τέτοια πανόρια λιγερή να σέρνει ο πεθαμένος». Τ' άκουσε πάλι αρετή και ράγισε η καρδιά της. Άκουσες, Κωνσταντάκη μου, τι λένε τα πουλάκια. Άφησα ρέτη τα πουλιά και ό,τι κι αστέλας λέγουν.
These are Alexandros' words, right?
An essay he wrote for school. Now, Central Command was telling them to get in touch with them.
Head to the station. Yeah.
Το πρώτο όχημα δεν κλωβίστηκε από το σημείο προς το οικείο. Ένα τέσσερα.
Είμαστε στο οικείο τώρα.
Ελήφθη. 1-13 μαζί μας, παρακαλούμε. 1-13 για αρχείο, παρακαλούμε.
Asking them again to contact Central Command.
Διαβιβάστε στο όχημα.
Όχημα των εξαρχείων επικοινωνήστε μαζί μας. Παράκληση.
Ελήφθη.
μαζί μας. Παράκληση.
Ελήφθη.
Όχημα των εξαρχείων.
Διαβιβάστε μας.
Ενεργήστε παρακαλούμε πολύ. 1-13 μαζί μας τώρα.
Επικοινωνούμε κέντρο.
Ask them again after 6 minutes.
Εκτός καταγραφής.
And they tell them now,
Contact them
call
by
us on
phone.
the phone.
Yeah.
Yes, no record. So they are consciously telling them to get off the radio. They were sitting out front of the police station, they said, for more than 6 minutes.
Το ειδικό των εξαρχείων. Διαβιβάστε. Το ειδικό των εξαρχείων. Διαβιβάστε. Είστε στο τμήμα κι εσείς. Το ειδικό είναι στο ΑΤΑΦ εξαρχείων. Το ειδικό είναι στο ΑΤΑΦ εξαρχείων. Όχημα εξαρχείων. Όχημα
Yeah,
εξαρχείων.
and then, so
Όχημα των
this is
εξαρχείων.
what happened
Είστε μαζί μας.
to the police officers. What happened in Exarchia is Alexandros was declared dead,
Κέντρο ενεργούμε
and
1-13.
within a few hours the protests started. And as I said before, they didn't stop for weeks, and the commemorations haven't stopped for years from this point onwards.
Well, when you told me about Black December, I didn't realize it was the whole month. And then,
It's sort of like, so there's another example I'll use from Italy. There was, and I'm gonna butcher it, so I'm not gonna say the details because I don't remember them off the top of my head.
sure.
But a protester there was shot and run over by the police there during G20 riots. I think, like I said, I'm not too big on it.
That's fine.
But that became a commemoration as well, and Black December is sort of the same. It's grown out of the Greek anarchist and communist movement. It's the protests that grew out of those communities where the anarchists that were involved in there, because Alexis was an anarchist himself.
Was he? Okay.
They commemorated it by turning the month into a month of action, and the black flag is the anarchist flag, henceforth Black December. And so it's the most intense month, let's put it like that, in Greece most of the years.
So were the police officers indicted? Did the truth come out about what happened through the courts?
Yes. So initially, the officer who shot was charged with murder without intent.
Okay.
They bumped it up to murder with intent.
Mm-hmm.
And then, sorry, he was found guilty of a homicide with direct intent to cause harm.
Okay.
So he was sentenced. He was sentenced to a lifetime in prison.
Right. So justice is done.
You would say, up until July 2019,
Right.
when his life sentence got reduced, it was overturned in an appeal, and he has to spend 13 years in jail, which caused him to be released from prison.
He was released from prison. He doesn't have his job back, I hope.
I would hope not.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That is just wow. So December 6th in Greece with Alexandros, and then in Chile they have March 29th is the Day of the Young Combatant, where they had similar riots. And I think France as well has had, well, with the yellow vest people, but they've.
Yeah, but there was and his name escapes me now, but I think it was in Lyon. I'm not sure.
In Lyon?
I can't even remember. Yeah, I can't even remember his name, but he was also a local anti-fascist, which was murdered by fascist gangs, basically. And I know there were quite some actions for that person as well.
Mm-hmm.
There were police killings as well. There's many to choose from, I think, because police can be very heavy-handed in France as well.
Yeah, didn't they tear down the Roma village that was there, the shanty towns?
That's a good example of how they go about, because you would say that's a bit excessive,
right?
But from the riot police in France, I'm not surprised at all by that type of action that you would see there.
And they also have immigrants pushing in settlements up there too as well, right? And
they absolutely beat the shit out of the little housing that they have there, and the people themselves. Stories of their cell phones being taken, the little money that they have being taken. I would hear in Greece, because mind you, Greece is one of the outer borders of Europe. So I also was there for, I don't want to use the words that they use, for a refugee crisis, not the migrant crisis that they want to call it. But the same happens in France.
Mm-hmm.
They steal their money, they take everything they can have to even be in contact with their family, and then they send them on their merry way. Or sometimes they'll take them in, but they'll certainly not process them as they should legally do.
Well, if you don't have papers, you don't have a home in Europe, right? Or benefits, or medical.
Yeah, and but they're supposed to get the opportunity to apply for asylum, and which in certainly not every case happens. Right. And the cases that do happen take a long time.
So After Alexandros was shot and everything, was there any change in Greek society or in the political establishment? Did they try to, well, obviously they tried to just sweep it under the rug with the police, right? And then it came out, the truth came out. Were there any repercussions or anything that happened in
any structural changes, you mean?
Yeah, anything happen in a positive way to say, hey, let's stop shooting kids or people, you know?
I would love to be able to say that, but I have to say no to that. As I said a little bit earlier, Greek police is quite bad, in my opinion. Bad in many senses. Bad because they shoot kids. Bad because they beat up protesters indiscriminately, which they are known for as well. Bad because they gas protesters as a standard. But also bad in the sense that what would be the standard, like, I guess every society can imagine like a corrupt cop. Every society, and we all know they exist. We all know they're a big part of what the structural problem with police is. Apart from all the racist implications and stuff like that, the corruption is also a problem. The power game finds itself there as well. In Greece, it tends to be bordering on most of the police officers are pretty goddamn corrupt, like on the base level. I can tell you from my own personal interactions there. A little money goes a long way sometimes with a police officer.
Right. Well, I'm showing the Christmas tree in Greece. You can't see it, unfortunately. Surrounded by police.
Yes, that happened on the 20th of December, because they went to guard the Christmas tree, which the symbol itself, I don't mean the Christmas tree, but the actual police officers being told by their command to go and guard a Christmas tree against protesters.
And they've burnt more than one Christmas tree down, right?
Yes, because they wanted to make it into a symbol apparently, so it's become a symbol now. They wanted their pretty Christmas tree, so now I'm pretty sure every year they try to do it, and some years they succeed, some years they fail.
Right, and in America, the Fox Christmas tree got burnt down this year.
Yes.
So what happens in Greece eventually goes around the world. But you know, Greece is the birthplace of democracy, Falco. I mean, how come the people haven't risen up and voted these guys out of office? What's stopping them? I mean, it's the birthplace of democracy, right?
It's the birthplace of democracy, but in many ways, I think it's where democracy went to die in the last decades as well. Because, like I said, they had, if we count from the Second World War on, they had two fascist dictatorships. One of the military junta in the 70s, and Metaxas himself, which, we're starting from the Second World War, my arbitrary line that I put. So I do that because that's where they had the first one, Metaxas, and so the switch and the fight between moving from a fascist dictatorship and moving back into a virgin democracy again, in a way, has taken its toll every time. And Greek society is very polarized. It's very left-right, let's put it like that. But it's also very skewed. What I said earlier, a little money goes a long way. Well, a lot of money gets you all the way there, in many respects. And that's the problem. It's a very unrepresentative democracy, which I think is a fundamental problem. If you have that in your democracy, if your democracy is not representative enough, which Greece is not an exception, it's an extreme example.
Right.
Because a lot of Western democracies are exactly that. They are not representative enough.
I like that phrase, not representative, but an extreme example. That's a very good phrase, Falco. And thank you.
It's not that they're that different. Like, it's not a fascist dictatorship. that luckily they don't have anymore. But it is, in a sense, an oligarchy, and not in the traditional sense of the word that we use it. But it's a Greek word, or it has its basis in Greek. And in Greek it means oligos, the few rule, oligos archos, if you pull it apart.
Right.
To the few that rule, the few that will rule, or that actually can rule, and that's more or less still the case. It's just an extreme example, because I don't think we need to think of or need to think that hard to think of some examples. I think we can think of very powerful people that are powerful merely because of the vast wealth that they have accumulated.
I would agree with that. So, can I say the future of Greece is that every year for a while, December 6th will be a protest day, in the month of December will be Black December. Do you see that changing in the future, or not yet? Or it's hard to say.
The fact that the Polytechnic uprising was not an official holiday up until 99, if I remember correctly. The most intense protests that they had were in 96, 97 and 98 were heavy as well. And that caused PASOK, one of the local parties, to push for the commemoration, which is on the 17th of November, to become a national holiday.
Right.
They were already making it a national. It was just not official. It was a massive day of protest, which still happens. So, do I see it stopping? No, because they might have the boot of capitalism firmly on top of their head, but the Greeks don't take things lying down in that way.
Well, thank you. Fascinating. Thank you so much, Falco, for sharing the story.
You're welcome.
Perhaps you and I can talk about the Polytechnic uprising in the future. I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Falco. You take care, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Όχημα των εξαρχείων, επικοινωνήστε μαζί μας. Όχημα εξαρχείων.
Κέντρο ενεργού με 113.
Ενεργήστε.
Αλίμενα, αδερφάκι μου, γιατί είναι τούτη η ώρα. Αν είσαι σκηνή για χαρά, να στολιστώ και να έχω. Και αν είναι πίκρα, πες μου το, να βάλω μαύρα να έρθει.
Έλα αρετή στο σπίτι μας κι ας είσαι όπως κι αν είσαι. Κοντολιγίζει τ' άλογο και πίσω την καθίζει. Στη στράτα που διαβαίνανε, πουλάκια κυλαϊδούσαν. Δεν κυλαϊδούσαν σαν πουλιά, μήτε σαν χελιδόνια. Μόν κυλαϊδούσαν και έλεγαν ανθρώπινη ομιλία. Ποιος είδε κόρη όμορφη να σέρνει ο πεθαμένος.
Άκουσε, Κωνσταντίνα μου, τι λένε τα πουλάκια.
Πουλάκια είναι και σκελεδούν, πουλάκια είναι και λένε.
Thank you for listening to NorthOf48 and the story about Alexandros. You can find the film to this on Freedom TV, which is on YouTube, and it's written, directed by Manos Zizak, and I take no credit for the film at all, only commentary, and I couldn't have the commentary included on this video without Falco, so thank you very much, Falco. I want you guys to have some good holidays and don't have a dark December. Let's try for a little lightness. Take care till next time. Bye.